Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Packers Unscripted from Packers.com. I am Mike Spofford, joined, as always, by my partner in crime, Wes Hodkowitz. We're coming to you here from our studios at Lambeau Field to talk about another Green Bay Packers victory with backup quarterback Malik Willis. Wes, this one was 30-14, a very convincing victory on the road at Tennessee. Packers get to 2-1. Titans drop to 0-3. A lot to talk about here, whether you're talking about what Malik Willis did on the offensive side, what the Packers did on the defensive side. So I will let you decide where you want to start with this one.
Well, I think we have to start with all due respect to the defense and all due respect to the Packers and everything they did offensively. Matt LaFleur going to his podium and this post-game news conference and talking about just how inconceivable it is what Malik Willis has been able to do on the short timeline with which he's had to work. In the fact that he has not played a lot of NFL football up until this point and has been able to play winning football at every turn, whether it's him using his legs, it's whether he's using his arms, or whether it's just him managing the offense and the motions and everything that functions on time. This is unlike anything I've seen, and for as much as we will celebrate and herald, like what Matt Flynn did coming back in 2013 and helping the Packers with the playoff push, Flynn had been in the offense before. He'd worked with Mike McCarthy and Tom Clements.
For 4 years.
For 4 years. Malik Willis showed up with a bag and was like, all right, let's play some quarterback. And you go, Malik Willis, we'll see what happens with the Vikings game and whether or not Jordan Love plays. We'll talk about that later this week. Let's say Love does. Let's say Malik Willis, good Lord willing, doesn't see the field again this year because Jordan Love's so healthy and playing at such an incredible level, we never have to talk about it again, unless they want to use him in some certain types of packages. The Packers gave up a 7th-round pick for this guy, and they got 2 wins out of it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the biggest return of investment I can even think of when you're talking about trades that happen at the end of training camp.
Yeah, and I don't like to, and I'm going to keep this brief because I don't like to disparage other NFL franchises by any means. This is a tough business. It's the most competitive business there is, professional sports. But I don't think I've witnessed in all my time doing this an egg on the face as badly as what happened in Tennessee there, where the quarterback that they had discarded, that they had relegated to number 3, they were going to cut him, maybe bring him back on the practice squad. We don't even know that for sure. And they dumped him for a 7th-round pick. And he walked back in there less than a month later into that same building and beat that team and badly outplayed the quarterback that they have pinned their hopes to for the future. That's as embarrassing as it gets in this league. I'm sorry, and I feel bad for Titans fans to a certain extent, although, as I said in Insider Inbox, they didn't even show up to support their team on Sunday. Packers fans took over that place, took over Nissan Stadium in Nashville. Hats off to the Green Bay fans for that. But Malik Willis, 2 starts. His passer rating is over 120. The offense has rushed for more than 450 yards, or right around 450, in the 2 games that he's been the starting quarterback. He got in on the rushing act in this last one, not only with some scrambles, the improvised stuff when the play breaks down in the pocket, but with some design runs as well. The zone read keepers, those were working early. 73 rushing yards and a touchdown rushing for Malik Willis. All of that in the first half as the Packers build a 20-7 lead in this game. And quite frankly, the Titans, once Jair Alexander got the pick 6 to make it 17-7, right? The Titans never made it a 1-score game again. It was a multi-score game the rest of the way.
Yep. And that's what you want to see. As Aaron Nagler talked about it after the game in his podcast, and a lot of people discussed it. You want to play a 4-quarter football game. You want to keep your pedal to the floor. And I felt like Green Bay did that, especially the fact that 7 of those 8 sacks came in the second half. Most of them came in the 4th quarter. The Packers were able to push the Titans to the brink and then did exactly what you want to see them do against a team that they're played better than and they overall look superior to. And just quickly to mention about the Malik Willis rushing aspect of this thing, A week ago, they kept it very manageable for him, especially early on. He had to make some throws in the second half when the running game started to slow a little bit, but it was Josh Jacobs, it was Jaden Reed. In this game, with how much the Tennessee Titans were buckling down against wanting to stop Jacobs, things became open for the Packers on the outside. And what I loved about this game, and this is the hallmark of a good football team, regardless of who your quarterback is, you play one way one week, can you play differently the next?
Right.
The Green Bay Packers absolutely threw the changeup that they needed to throw against the Tennessee Titans. And what was that changeup? Explosive plays. 2 30-yard completions on the opening series that ends up generating a touchdown. They finished that drive. They got the 7 points.
Right.
And from there, Green Bay was able to have enough of those ruptures that even though if they weren't running the ball great in the first half, they were able to counter with big explosive plays on the other side of it, several of which came on 3rd and long situations you do not anticipate converting on 3rd and 14, on 3rd and 18. The Green Bay Packers' efficiency in this game, on both sides of the ball, we'll talk more about the defense here momentarily, but for them to play clean football back-to-back weeks, no turnovers offensively, with a backup quarterback, Mike, it don't happen like that in the NFL.
No, it doesn't. Yeah, Malik Willis' ability to be efficient, to be explosive, but also protect the ball all at the same time has been it's been a remarkable combination for somebody who just got to Green Bay roughly a month ago. I want to talk about those 3rd and longs, and this will help us transition also to the defensive side, because as I've spent a couple days processing this game and with some of the coverage and the film review and different things that I do, I don't think I appreciated at the time and when we were writing all our post-game stuff on the bus, on the plane coming back, all that, how pivotal the drive at the end of the first half was for multiple reasons. Packers are up 17-7. They get the ball with 6:02 on the clock.
Yep.
And there are multiple times during that drive where the Packers are in serious danger of giving the ball back to the Titans, with the Titans down by 10 points and a chance for the Titans to double up with the possession at the end of the first half and then getting the ball coming out to start the third quarter because they had deferred on the opening coin toss. Packers had 3 offensive penalties on that drive, 25 yards in penalties. But in overcoming those penalties, Malik Willis converts the 3rd and 14 on the deep in route to Romeo Doubs. Then 3rd and 18 because of penalties. And he hits Christian Watson, who then is able to slip down the sideline because L'Jarius Sneed fell down as Watson is cutting across. And that 3rd and 18 turns into a 37-yard gain. The Packers end up, now they weren't able to finish that drive. They end up kicking a field goal, but the Packers ended up killing the entire 6:02 at the end of the first half. They get the 3 points and they go up 20-7. So the Titans didn't get it back, didn't get the chance to double up. And the reason I'm emphasizing this drive so much is because then what happens at the start of the second half? The Titans come out. They get, I believe, 1 first down. They have the ball at their own 37-yard line. Maybe it wasn't even 1 first down at that point. But they decide to go for it on 4th and 1 inside their own 40-yard line, down by 13 points. They had initially sent out the punter. The crowd, what was there of a Tennessee crowd, was booing. They call timeout. They decide to go for it on 4th and 1. And I didn't realize this at the time, but Tennessee had only run 18 offensive plays in the entire first half. They had a 10-play drive for a touchdown, a 1-play drive that was Alexander's pick 6, and then back-to-back punts in which the drives were only 4 plays and 3 plays. 18 snaps in the first half is all they had. There is no doubt in my mind that the Packers killing the last 6 minutes of the first half and Tennessee coming out, not only because they were down 13, but they'd only run 18 plays, they'd only had the ball 4 times, that strongly influenced a highly risky decision to go for it on 4th and 1 in their own territory. They fail on the 4th and 1 as Quay Walker, Isaiah McDuffie, Jair Alexander combined to take away, a little run-pass option thing they were trying to run with Will Levis. Packers hit the screen pass to Emmanuel Wilson for a touchdown. It's 27-7. That sequence, end of first half, beginning of second half, just completely turned this game on its head.
Yeah.
And it's a credit to both sides of the ball for the Packers. What the offense overcame with the penalties to kill 6 minutes and get a field goal, and then the defense to get the stop on the 4th and 1, a very questionable decision to go for it there when it's so early in the third quarter. That was a pivotal sequence in this game, and the Packers were in command the rest of the way.
Brian Callahan, first year head coach, made 2 pivotal errors, I felt like, at the beginning of the second half. You can't do anything about the Packers and the drive they went on at the end of the first half. You could have stopped them.
The defense
could have got the opportunity to come back and actually...
3rd and 14, 3rd and 18, you have a chance to get the ball back at the end of the first half and possibly do the double-up thing with having deferred, and their defense completely blew that.
They did. So, and then the second half, you go back, you end up coming out right out of the gate. The fact is that I felt like if you send your punting team out there first, that's the move. You already told your offense that you think you should punt there. Now you're killing a timeout where you're down 13 points and you're having to now you're punting. And then also from the standpoint, the other thing I thought was almost inexcusable, they didn't run the ball at all on that series to start the third quarter.
Right.
They were down 13 points and they were acting like they were down 21 points. They were still in a position, as it even showed, Mike, when they finally did get back in the end zone there. Even at that point, I think it was 27-14. You're still in a manageable situation in the middle of the third quarter. And then slowly the yarn began to unravel.
Yeah, I mean, they'd run 18 plays in the first half. You're barely out of whether you want to call it a 15-play script or your first 15 thoughts or how the game plan is designed. You're barely out of those initial thoughts of various situations, on the game plan. It felt like they got completely rattled by the fact that they were walking out at the start of the second half, not only down by 13 points, but feeling like they hadn't had the ball on offense really since their opening possession of the game when they did move it and they got a touchdown, and them trying to force the issue just completely backfired.
Yeah, and with a young quarterback like that who's already been turnover prone, when you're playing from behind, that's when bad things can happen. And in this case, I mean, you look at the fact that Devontae Wyatt had 2 second-half sacks. Preston Smith had sacks on back-to-back series to end the game. You had Quay Walker, again, like you were talking about, step up and make a huge play, stopping Will Levis along with Isaiah McDuffie. But that's a pivotal position there for the Packers to get the ball at the 37-yard line. It won't count towards those takeaway numbers we keep referencing, but the Packers got the ball at their 37, and they had a 30-yard screen pass to score a touchdown.
Yeah.
Now, go ahead.
No, sorry, go ahead.
No, Emmanuel Wilson, maybe he goes. Maybe he still scores on like 60-yard touchdown there. We don't know once he gets in the open field, but the fact is you're dealing with the short field, and one of the things that had really been hurting the Packers through these first 2 games, the first 8 quarters, was the fact that they weren't able to finish those drives. And in this game, they did. And with a few small exceptions, one of which, being the penalty situation, Green Bay played a pretty clean football game by and large in all 3 phases.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get back to the penalties in a second. You said it though, a fourth down stop, especially in that area of the field, that's as good as a turnover. That functions as a takeaway, even though statistically it's not a fumble or an interception. But you talk about forcing the issue. As the second half wore on, Jeff Hafley started dialing it up, man. I mean, Will Levis was having trouble making plays. He wasn't really using his legs and trying to scramble and do things, which is what I thought he would do quite a bit going into this game. He didn't really do that. He was trying to sit in the pocket and make throws and make plays, and the Packers pass rush just kept caving in that Titans offensive line, sometimes sending a 5th guy, sometimes sending 6 guys, and sometimes just the straight 4-man rush with the stunts and things they were running. Packers end up racking up 8 sacks. Statistically, it ends up as 3 takeaways, with Alexander's pick 6, Enagbari with the strip sack that Lucas Van Ness recovers, and then late in the game, Xavier McKinney. What more can we say about that guy? 3 games as a Green Bay Packer, 3 interceptions. The defense really came to play. Unfortunately, that offside on Preston Smith allowed the Titans on the first drive to end up scoring a touchdown when the Packers were going to hold them to a field goal. Rashawn Gary had gotten a sack on 3rd down there, ended up not counting. But that was one of the only mistakes the Packers defense made in this entire game, and it was just right in the very beginning. As the game wore on, the Packers defense really found its legs, found its footing, and they made life miserable for a young quarterback who has had a pretty miserable first 3 weeks of the season.
They very much did, and which is what you have to do. Again, the most sacks the Packers have had in a game in almost 20 years. It was January of 2005, closing out that season, that they actually were able to get 8 sacks in a game. And when you break it down, too, I was talking with Preston Smith in the locker room afterwards, and you could tell how much that bothered him that he had that neutral zone infraction. This is a guy that's very prideful about what he does, and he is a very, very close friend and mentor to Rashawn Gary. He didn't want to take that sack off the board for him. But then to be able to rally, he mentioned this, even the 2 series where, you look at the 2 touchdown producing series that the Titans had, they moved the ball pretty easily, for not to be disrespectful, but it was a pretty seamless, efficient drive. But one thing Preston mentioned was the way that this group is put together, the amount of players that they have, the veterans that they have who have played football here, they're not rattled by that. They still feel like on the next play, the next series, they're going to get a sack. They're going to get a negative yardage play. They're going to get a takeaway. And now 9 takeaways through the first 3 games, the most since 2009 that the Packers have had. 3 consecutive games with 3 takeaways each. This is winning football. And what you did, even though they still have some issues to answer for with the run game, this will be a huge test coming up this upcoming weekend.
Yeah,
they forced the Tennessee Titans to play one-dimensional, 33 rushing yards in this game, with Will Levis's 12 yards contributing to that.
Yeah.
That changes the complexion of everything. And listening to those defensive ends and those defensive linemen talk about this in the game afterwards, they were over the moon about what that was like playing in the fourth quarter and just how much fun that was. And to quote Elton Jenkins in one of his, things, quoting Drake, I mean, they were on their ass like a back pocket. It is, there's no better way to put it.
Yeah.
And the fact is that when you're facing a young quarterback that hasn't played a lot of football at this level, when you can generate that much pressure, you can create that amount of doubt, that's the result.
Yeah, what I sensed is when the Titans had that drive in the third quarter where they went right down the field, they cut it from 27-7 to 27-14. Levis was looking kind of comfortable in the pocket. He was making the plays. Packers were sitting back a little bit, just doing straight 4-man rush kind of stuff. And I think after that drive, as you said, it was a little bit too easy for Tennessee. I think after that drive, Jeff Hafley said, okay, I don't know how many times we're going to be able to sack this guy, but he needed to start dialing it up. He needed to start coming after him to make him uncomfortable, to speed him up, change the rhythm. The Packers needed to change something there. And then when those change-ups, speeding up Will Levis started to lead to the mistakes and the sacks and all that, then they just kept after it. They just kept going because the Titans didn't have an answer for it. And I thought the way the rest of that second half was called was very much a result of that one touchdown drive by the Titans and just how comfortable Levis looked. And it's like, okay, can't let him just look that comfortable out there. Even if you're not going to sack him, you've got to do something to disrupt him. And then those disruptions ended up being successful and ended up really working in Green Bay's favor.
And so it won them the game, and it's why Matt LaFleur was so excited about the defense in the post-game locker room and in the huddle afterwards. 2 things that stood out to me, though, that I was thinking about while I was watching this game. One, you unfortunately have to read everything I write because it's part of your job description. But Keyshawn Nixon had said last week when I was talking with him at his locker, he feels like he's blitzed more this season from the slot than he has all of last year. You saw how they used Edger and Cooper in this game. I think Edge played 16 snaps, and he came down on a blitz, and he was able to get his first half sack.
He did.
The Packers are. It's not just okay. Well, it's Kenny Clark, Preston Smith, and Rashawn Gary. No, it is a wave of players that Jeff Hafley threw at Levis, and I think when you think about this defense and them talking about vision to the football and aggression, it's not just sending Engage 8. That worked out really good for Cincinnati at the end of the Washington game. It's about being strategic about how you blitz guys. And occasionally, you want to push the gas and send 6. The Packers got home with that too.
Yep.
But it's about the creativity, the quality, not the quantity. And I thought this was a good representation of that.
Yeah, I agree with you. The one black mark I would say on this team, maybe two. One being Braden Narveson did miss another field goal, ended up not counting because the Tennessee Titans were penalized on that missed field goal, so the Packers got a fresh set of downs, and then that's what led to the screen pass for a touchdown by Emmanuel Wilson. So still hoping that Narveson can smooth things out here. He did come back later in the game and drilled a 47-yarder with plenty of room to spare, so that was good to see. But the penalties are something, the penalties are plaguing the Packers a little bit, and plaguing is a little bit strong of a word. The way I wrote a story about this on our website Monday night with Matt LaFleur talking about it in his Monday press conference, that and comments from players in the locker room on Sunday that you had gotten from your interviews, that the penalties are just are preventing the Packers from sort of reaching their peak, from really playing at peak performance. They've now been flagged 26 times, and that's not including declined or offsetting penalties. 26 infractions through 3 games. I believe the penalty yards is somewhere close to 200. I can't remember the number. Maybe it's 196 or something like that. But they've been flagged too much in the first 3 games. Matt LaFleur knows it. He knows that they have to clean it up. The players know it. It was part of their film review on Monday. And whether you're talking about the holdings or the lining up offsides and things like that, it really comes down to the details. It's whether it's the details of your technique or the details of how you line up before the snap, those kinds of things. It's definitely stuff that the Packers can clean up and that they can fix, but they need to do so because you're staring at a pretty big early season game against the NFC North leading and 3-0 Minnesota Vikings coming up, and you don't want to be walking out of Lambeau Field with another 8 to 10 penalties on your register, because it's going to be awfully tough to beat Minnesota if that happens again.
100%. And before I dive all into that, I want to quickly give a shout out to the Tennessee Titans, who, according to Clay Martin and his crew, played the cleanest 60 minutes of offensive and defensive football in the history of the National Football League. No penalties on either the offense or defense.
Yeah, they had 2 special teams?
Both on special teams. And it killed them. It was bad.
Yeah, the one was a killer because instead of getting the ball back at 20-7 with the missed field goal, Packers get the screen pass for the touchdown on the fresh set of downs, and it's 27-7, and that game was headed a different way.
Tug and shoot. Pull and shoot. That's what it was. Okay.
The pull and shoot.
I learned one during this game.
Yeah, I did too. I hadn't actually heard a referee say that through the microphone, to explain a penalty, that he called it defensive holding, the pull and shoot, where you grab onto a guy and you yank him out of the way so that one of your teammates can shoot the gap to try to block the field goal. Well, they caught him at it, and the Packers took advantage.
There's a lot of bodies in there too. I'm surprised they did. But be that as it may, Mike, bringing this back to the Green Bay Packers, you brought up some excellent points there. One of being that both of those long third down conversions were brought on by penalty.
Yeah.
The holding issues that Green Bay was working through, and then also the illegal hands of the face on Rasheed Walker, that's what led to Green Bay having to make long third down conversions. You can't live in that world. It is incredible what Malik Willis did. I mean, that pass to Romeo Doubs is about as good as it's going to get in the National Football League, and then he gave Christian Watson a chance to make a play. Watson can make those plays. It was a beautiful thing to watch, but you have to clean that stuff up. And I appreciate how people took ownership for it. I mentioned what Preston Smith said about, kind of feeling guilty about what happened on his neutral zone infraction. You had Elton Jenkins, who I think in a lot of ways is playing at a Pro Bowl caliber level again, but got busted for 2 holding penalties in this thing. Zach Tom, who's probably playing at an all-pro level at right tackle, had 1 illegal formation as well. So there are procedural penalties that the Packers have to clean up. I've always said this, Michael. You are going to get called for holding in this league, unless, of course, you're the Tennessee Titans in this game. But you are going to get called for holding. You are going to have defensive holding and pass interference. Those things are going to happen to you. Illegal formations, illegal motions, false starts, encroachment, neutral zone infractions. That's where you got to be smart.
That's the easiest stuff to clean up, because that's all the pre-snap stuff, and that's just really a matter of focus and concentration and all that. As you say, the combative stuff. Mike McCarthy used to use the word combative when it came to the post-snap penalties. Those types of penalties, yes, they're going to happen. You want to try to reduce them. The players know that sometimes, they lose control of their technique. By the same token, those offensive linemen are out there saying, we don't want to get our quarterback killed. So if they feel like they're getting beat and they're going to grab onto somebody, they do that. I think what somewhat's been unfortunate is the Packers have been called for offensive holding a couple times on running plays where it isn't about protecting the quarterback, and they just aren't executing the way they should in those instances. I'm going to take care of some sponsor business here, Wes. Sirius XM NFL Radio delivers hard-hitting analysis and up-to-the-minute NFL news that true football fanatics need 24/7, 365. And at Cousin Subs, we have something for everyone, like our Wisconsin cheese curds, mac and cheese, golden fries, and creamy shakes, all paired with your favorite sub or sub in a bowl. Cousin Subs, 50-plus years of better. All right, looking back, other results in week 3, of course, the biggest one, you and I were sort of keeping an eye on it, although it got out of hand early. Minnesota against the previously 2-0 Houston Texans. It ends up a rout, 34-7 in favor of the Vikings. There are 2 teams in the NFC, Wes, that are 3-0. The Minnesota Vikings and the Seattle Seahawks. And one of those, Minnesota, is coming to Lambeau Field on Sunday in week 4. Just as we all figured. The Vikings, with the quarterback change and then the draft pick gets injured and they turn it over to Sam Darnold, they're 3-0. And the Packers, having lost their starting quarterback in week 1, win 2 games with a backup, and they are 2-1. And now they square off in a pretty significant early season matchup here in Green Bay.
I think it really, one thing I really like about the way the schedule did lay out is you did have a chance to get some of these non-conference games in terms of like the college reference to it. Obviously, they played an in-conference game against the Philadelphia Eagles, but now you're getting up against your division. Both of these teams have kind of built some wind and got some wind in their sails. I made the line in Insider Inbox. I wrote the line that, I think there's reason for both of these teams to be confident. And in a lot of ways, the Minnesota Vikings kind of remind me of the 2019 Green Bay Packers in that I personally left them for dead. I thought they were the 4th place team in the division. I thought they were, especially once J.J. McCarthy went down, I'm like, what is this team going to be able to accomplish this year? I was very wrong. Brian Flores is doing remarkable work with that defense. Kevin O'Connell is one of the brightest offensive minds in the game. And then here's the other thing, Mike, and this is why I draw the parallel to 2019. The Vikings had to get new personnel. They had to find upgrades, and they've done that. Bringing in a guy like Aaron Jones, yeah, he's going to be a big talking point because of his connections to the Packers, but let's take all that away. Multiple-time Man of the Year nominee, a guy that has been a Pro Bowl running back in this league, at 29 years old, still is finding ways to get better and is off to a great start. That's what this run game for Minnesota needed after last season.
Yeah.
The answer when Delvin Cook left, it wasn't Alexander Mattison.
No, it wasn't.
They had to find a new path. They did that. And there's countless examples of this with the free agents they've acquired, Sam Darnold being one of them. But the Vikings made smart signings, and it's helped make up for the fact that they basically have no draft picks.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, for as much as they've struggled to help themselves in a lot of ways in the draft. And of course, the jury's still out on J.J. McCarthy.
Yeah.
He's out for the year, and I think we'll be talking about him plenty in the years to come. But you're right, and what Minnesota was able to do in free agency has compensated for not being able to help themselves as much in the draft as they would want to. It's already looking pretty darn interesting in the NFC North. I know the Bears are struggling. They lost to the Indianapolis Colts on the road. They're 1-2, but the Detroit Lions went out to Arizona, beat the Cardinals 20-13. So you have the Vikings at 3-0, the Packers and the Lions both at 2-1 through 3 games in the NFC North. Did you see the at the end of the first half how that Lions Cardinals game just?
I did not.
There was a play. Jared Goff throws what turned into a pick 6 by the Cardinals. Wow. And then after the play was over, the officials decided that the clock had reached the 2-minute warning of the first half before the snap. And they just said the play doesn't count.
Wow.
And then a few plays later, the Lions got a touchdown, and got 7 points going the other way. Very strange sequence of events there. Just to update everybody, in case you're not paying attention, 3 teams in the AFC are 3-0: the Kansas City Chiefs, the Pittsburgh Steelers, and the Buffalo Bills, who put a hurting on the Jacksonville Jaguars on Monday Night Football. The Jaguars now 0-3 with Trevor Lawrence and his big monster contract. But in reflecting on Monday Night Football, we'd be remiss if we didn't bring up what happened in Cincinnati on Monday night. Jaden Daniels, the Heisman Trophy winning star from LSU, has arrived on the scene in the NFL, man, on the road against a pretty darn good defense with a veteran defense with a veteran defensive coordinator. He carved them up, man. Basically, they scored points every time they touched the ball. Would they end up racking up 38, was it, to win that game? Jaden Daniels only throws 2 incompletions the entire game. One of those would have been a touchdown if he'd been able to hit it. Sometimes when young quarterbacks are thrown into the fire right away, they can hit the ground running. There is no tried and true set formula for how to do this, because sometimes Jaden Daniels shows up.
And there is one kind of somewhat tried and true formula. Give the guy an offensive line and give him some playmakers.
Very good point.
The more I read about the Washington Commanders, the more there really was a belief there that they had the pieces in place there to compete this year if they could find the quarterback.
Yep.
And I think they did it with this young man, because and this is a lot of what Houston did too, man, where they really struggled mightily for a long time. But then they get C.J. Stroud, and they have guys around him to pick him up, and then they let the guy make plays.
Yeah, and Stroud ends up being the NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year.
Absolutely. And watching Jaden Daniels, and there were so many great moments in that game, but I'm sitting there watching the end of it because I have, just to give you some insight here, I have some fantasy football stakes into all this. No gambling at Bushwood, but a very competitive league that I've been in for 20 years. And, I might have had Zach Moss and waiting to see what he does. And, yeah, obviously a garbage touchdown, which very well appreciated at the end of that game. Won my game. Take that, Dave Vandermoss. 3-0. He's 2-1. It's all good. But be that as it may, Daniels' throw in Cincinnati sent everybody except their safeties basically at him on that play, including a free rusher, because they have 8 going after him. He stands up, does not wilt under pressure. And Michael, I'm telling you, if this would have been a play out at Nitschke Field and he's throwing that ball from the 40-yard line into those little nets in the end zone that they do that drill, he would have put it, if not in it, right by it. Yeah. He could not have thrown a better ball to Terry McLaurin.
Yeah, and it was a heck of a catch by McLaurin, too, because
incredible.
The coverage was outstanding.
Incredible.
But yeah, amazing, absolutely amazing performance and an amazing finish to that performance by Jaden Daniels.
Can I tell you a funny story? So I do the pregame radio with James Jones and Dennis Krause and Mike Heller, and they did this whole thing where they listed off all the 3-0 or all the 2-0 teams, and Dennis asked us, like, okay, who's the most, for real team in all this? Mike picked Houston. I picked Tampa Bay. and James said none of them. and then he's like,
be fooled.
He's probably like, he's like, the Texans probably are the best one, but I mean, I am believing in any of these teams. And I think that's really funny. I said Tampa Bay because I just felt like they figured out a formula, and then that formula unraveled against Denver. And then, conversely, man, I don't know if it was the Joe Mixon effect. I don't know what it was. I did not watch enough of that game, but
yeah, I didn't see enough of it either.
The Vikings got after the Texans, and a Texans team that I thought was going to be infallible and was going to, if not maybe not win every game, but not get blown out by 27 points.
Yeah.
That was an eye opener for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to look into that game a little bit more as the week goes along. We'll talk about it more on Thursday when we go into a little bit more depth with the Vikings, but I did see, like, right off the bat, the Vikings got an interception of Stroud, like, deep in Houston territory, and that just seemed to kind of set the tone. The Texans were kind of off kilter. The Vikings were rolling their home crowd, and and all of that in Minneapolis. So, but yeah, let's talk more Vikings on our next show.
And I'm going to close with this because I just want to remind everybody again how difficult it is to win in this league. The Los Angeles Rams survive San Francisco to go to 1-2. The 49ers now are 1-2. A lot of injuries, but they're still 1-2. Yep. Sean McVay's going to his post-game news conference saying, holy bleep, because his team just finally got on a win in a very difficult situation.
Incredibly difficult situation for the Rams.
Cincinnati 0-3. Baltimore holds off whatever that was in the fourth quarter by the Cowboys, both of those teams are 1-2. Miami loses Tua is 1-2. And then you're sitting here looking at a league where there's so much parity, there's so much hype in just how quickly teams are put in the crosshairs. Never discount a victory. The Green Bay Packers found 2 very hard-earned ones coming out of the AFC South, and now they've put them in a position to be in a very competitive game on Sunday against the Minnesota Vikings.
32 teams in this league, and only 5 still have a 0 in the loss column after 3 weeks. And hopefully the Packers can take that 0 out of the loss column for the Vikings this weekend. But we'll get to that later this week. For now, we'll call it a wrap on this edition of Packers Unscripted. Be sure to follow all of our coverage of the team on Packers.com. For Wes, I am Mike. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. We will see you next time.